career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges.
Ariel, your success proves that what I'm doing as a teacher has real meaning.
It was an honor helping you achieve your greatness. Now you're helping others achieve theirs. It inspires me.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Find free and supportive adult education centers near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
TJ, I know you're a passionate Duke fan.
Yep.
But how shocked were you by the news the other day that Cooper Flagg was going to turn down a pay raise of $4 million reportedly from his freshman year at Duke and instead just go straight to the NBA draft?
Oh, come on. We knew this was coming. I knew this was coming.
You were?
The long shot.
So you were not one of those that was holding out, shall we say, hope here in the fast lane.
Yeah, no. Zion said it. Kyrie said it. Everyone said it, and they still go on to the NBA draft. I mean, he can make a lot more in the NBA.
First of all, and I heard this on the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle and Ty Tracy this morning. The morning warm-up, wherever you listen to podcasts, if you missed it. I almost said Fast Lane, Ed Lane, but that's for us, not them. $90 million for a New Balance shoe contract because Duke's a Nike school, so you can't wear that New Balance at Duke. No. I mean, that alone covers it.
Yeah.
And when you have that opportunity, you can talk all you want, but I mean, to me, it's almost disingenuous when I hear that stuff. Like and maybe they're being told to do it by their parents, by their agents, by their handlers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the idea of keeping all doors open, which I don't even know why that matters in basketball because they're drafted on upside anyway. And we've seen plenty of players that have had injury concerns still drafted high just because they had enough upside. But the idea of it, I mean, I don't understand why people make such a deal out of it or anything else. Like it's literally the definition of bending over a dollar to pick up a dime, as the old saying goes. And as we mentioned on the InsaneRadioDeals.com fast take earlier today, because when you're talking about NBA players, the real crux of it is not just, although, I mean, $90 million, Duke was never going to be able to find a way to offer that in an NIL deal, even with all the sponsors and everybody else.
Yeah, no.
But in the NBA, just pretend that's not there.
Yeah.
It's about getting to the second contract. Like, that's what you're really looking at. I mean, worst case scenario, you're looking at north of $20 million a year for your second contract. 4 or 5 years, and then more bites at the proverbial financial apple. I mean, the whole name of the game in basketball in particular, because basketball is not scheme dependent the way football is. Think NFL draft. Where guys get drafted tomorrow night in the first round and the ensuing rounds is often variably based upon schematic fit within a program.
Yeah.
And what team needs are, because I'll boil it down in the most simple terms. What a running back does is completely different from what a cornerback does. Like it's totally different job descriptions, but you need each of those particular pieces. And if there is a glaring weakness, it can be exploited by opposing teams.
Yeah.
So it's different. And basketball, pro basketball has been this way for an eternity.
Yes.
It's just positionless basketball, which it's not just a collection of talent, because if that was the case, the Dallas Mavericks would be doing better than they were even after trading Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. Although the team morale decline is obvious, despite what Nico Harrison, the GM, I would say was paid to say when he spoke on this, because here's what he had to say about the trade earlier yesterday, I guess, is when he met with the media.
I didn't know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level. But really, the way we looked at it is, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. And so, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. So it just continued to, go on and on.
I mean, the only thing is either Nico Harrison is completely oblivious, or Nico Harrison, the GM of the Dallas Mavericks, is being paid handsomely by the Adelson family to take the heat on their desire to shed payroll and set the Dallas Mavericks more up to be a key entity if a casino could ever open up in Texas in the next couple of years, since the legislature only meets every other year in the supposedly great state of Texas. Yes, I'm mocking the idea that they call it the great state of Texas. We'll put the supposedly in front of it. Because, by the way, if you've ever been around people from Texas, I don't know if you were when you were in school at Liberty University, TJ, but I was around a ton of them. And yes,
time to take a detour in the fast lane.
Texas is one of those places like the Northeast, where they leave their area, then they're eager to come to our area and tell us how we should be doing things based upon the way it's done in their area.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I would say it definitely is. If it's so good in your area, we're not stopping you. Get your you-know-what back to Texas. Get your you-know-what back to the Northeast. We don't care how you do it up there. Sometimes it's not better. We don't want concrete jungles with traffic that's much worse than what you'll actually get on Wards Road or at the Old Forest Road, Lakeside Drive, 501 interchange. I'm calling it that because I don't want to mention any businesses, because I am petulant like that, unless they want to, of course, be a partner of ours. Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if they'd like to. We're always happy to have those discussions. But, the reality is in the NBA, it's positionless. So everybody's angling for the best deal. It's the same thing in college. Well, you've got more transfers, even more than in college football. And it is madness in football, so let's not get ourselves twisted. More on that in the Fast 5 at 5-ish in just a moment. But in football, there's a schematic dependency at the end of the day. May not be as prevalent in college, but when you get to the pros, they're drafting you based on how you fit a particular scheme. So if a guy is a safety, defensive back, plays further away from the line of scrimmage, and is trying to guard wide receivers or pass catchers, if his greater strength is stopping the run, and therefore he plays near the line of scrimmage, some teams value that, others don't. So in a lot of cases, how you're valued is based upon the way teams view you within the setup, which is why you'll look at, like, for example, we'll just throw his name out there, Daniel Jeremiah, who has his final prospect rankings list out at NFL.com. The guys that rank at the top of the prospect list are not necessarily the guys that are going to be drafted in that order. Whereas in the NBA, if you're the top prospect, you're probably going to be drafted at the top. If you're the fifth best prospect, you may not be drafted fifth, but you'll be drafted reasonably close to that range.
No, absolutely.
In the NFL, it's totally different. Like, and it should be. Like, that's the other thing. NBA people often, it's like positionless. Well, it works in that sport. Free flowing. Nobody has any restrictions. If that was the case in the NFL, it'd be total chaos. And the way you calm that down is just do what Philadelphia did. Oh, we're just going to beat you up on the line of scrimmage so you can be as cool and free-flowing as possible, but it doesn't really matter. We're just going to nuke that concept because we'll just blow you up on defense, and we will blow by you and through you on offense. And the guardians of the game, who want it to be perfectly balletic, may not like it, but whatever. But when you look at the rate of the NFL draft, I mean, it makes sense why some of these guys are going to be drafted much further apart. Colston Loveland is the seventh best prospect, according to Daniel Jeremiah. Tight end. Ahead, by the way, of number 8, Cam Ward, who's the quarterback who's going to go number 1. Why is Cam Ward the 8th ranked prospect, but he's going to go number 1? Positional importance, schematic value. Similar, Colston Loveland is one spot ahead of Ward, 7, not 8, but he's probably going to go, at earliest, maybe 14 to the Indianapolis Colts. So you've got guys that are 2 spots apart in the middle of the top 15 picks in the Daniel Jeremiah rankings. One is going to go number 1. The other may go on the opposite end, closer to 15. It's different. So when you look at football and basketball, just you can't compare them to where they are. And that's why for Cooper Flagg or any of these prominent one and dones, they are in college for 1 year because they are schematically diverse and there's not a lot of difference schematically in the NBA. So if they've got the skill set to guard a position or multiple positions effectively, which is one of the prerequisites, you've got offensive skills. you can continue to work on your game, but there's going to be a place for you. And all of that ties back into the discussion of Cooper Flagg and why this guy was never going to go back to Duke for his sophomore, junior, or senior seasons. The Boozer twins aren't coming back.
No.
You recruit those guys as Duke, knowing that they are one-and-done players.
Yeah.
And you may go along with the storyline because the handlers around them want to perpetuate the idea that they might be there for a long period of time. It's not the case. It never has been. It's not going to be. It's get to the NBA as soon as possible to get to your second contract, because if you're halfway decent, you're good in the NBA. Whereas in the NFL, you can get there soon, but if you don't fall into the right scheme or you're not properly developed, you won't get to your second contract. So there's no chance of making that generational wealth. Whereas in the NBA, by and large, Cooper Flagg is going to get to a second contract that is really lucrative. If Zion Williamson can literally eat his way out of being in good shape and not care about putting the work in to keep his body as healthy as possible, not quite to the Joel Embiid level, of course, because that's the classic example of having all this talent and flushing it down the drain, trying to keep it PG in the fast lane. No bitterness, of course, coming out as a Sixers fan. But no, if those two can continue to get big contracts when they are intentionally not doing the right things to keep themselves in shape, and the NBA is just like, we have to do it because that's what we have to do. And they stupidly give them contracts and then are shocked when they get injured and don't live up to it. Then Cooper Flagg is in the spot, and most of these guys are for Duke. So it's naive to think that they're going to be there any longer than 1 year when that is your business model as Duke, is to recruit one-and-done type players.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Duke, Kentucky, all those guys that follow that schematics, they know the price when picking up those kind of guys.
It's amazing you mentioned knowing the price, TJ, because it's easy to know what the price is and then know you're not paying full price at InsaneRadioDeals.com, because we list the value of what you're getting at InsaneRadioDeals.com. But whether it's Crosswhite Athletic Club memberships, a SeaofRed.com club passes, Fleet Feet Roanoke gift certificates, good to that particular store, Floyd Fest Aurora 2025 tickets. We've got a couple of them at InsaneRadioDeals.com. And the food, my goodness, there's a lot of food. If you're in Roanoke, Donnie's Bagels and Deli, they are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
My family loves them. And in the greater Hill City area, downtown Cairo, Duck Donuts, 801 Raw Bar, the Yard on 5th Street.
Love the Yard.
All fantastic food options at InsaneRadioDeals.com. And the best part is what the value of that gift certificate is and what you pay, which is less, of course, are clearly listed at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Now, speaking of value, the value of players, it's distorted, but it's a real thing.
Yeah.
And we have to discuss it once again in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
Speaking of value, I would say this, and I actually stand corrected. Rockingham had a sellout in both grandstands. It did not look like it was sold out. That's what we were going off of Monday in the fast lane. So to provide clarity on our comments about the race, visually it looked like 75% full for the truck race Friday afternoon and about 95% full for the Xfinity race on Saturday. But officially, it was a sellout crowd in the grandstands, 30,000, not 20,000, with both of those particular events. And of course, the suites also sold out for both of those events, especially for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, according to promoter Track Enterprises, for the first event that was held in the Xfinity Series at the venue in 21 years and for the first truck race in over a decade. Why that's relevant is, again, it has to make financial sense for NASCAR to go back to these type of venues. And if you continue to sell out these type of races, NASCAR, I would love to see them do more races away from the truck places. So it's not a companion truck Xfinity weekend or Cup truck Xfinity weekend. I'd love to see more like Rockingham, South Boston, Hickory, others in our area, because there are a lot of good ones across the country. But if you're not going to do that, at least you've got an idea that Rockingham is healthy enough to stand on its own. Speaking of healthy ideas, and a good one, Rockingham, we mentioned that, is just a couple of hours south of Chapel Hill, where North Carolina plays. And TCU and North Carolina will open their seasons at North Carolina this coming September, Labor Day night, for the beginning of the Bill Belichick era. But next year, 2026, They will be part of the week 0 games in Ireland to open the season. There are not a lot of those, but it is, take it for what it's worth, again, knowing who he might know and be friends with at the North Carolina football program. The one that the Super Bowl championship trophy might be named after. Not him directly, but the name itself. North Carolina is always looking for market efficiencies or inefficiencies and ways to be as efficient as possible. Lombardi and Belichick had made a killing off of finding loopholes in the system that give them a competitive advantage that are totally legal in a lot of cases. And in some cases, you can really question whether that's the case or not, of course. Spygate, Deflategate, which are overrated, but it is what it is. But I'm surprised more teams have not lobbied to be in a week 0 spot. You can start the season earlier for practice and preparation. So you get an extra week advantage. You get an extra bye week into your schedule.
Yeah.
And if you're North Carolina opening the season week 0 in Ireland, I am not at all surprised that they're going to do that with TCU next year. As long as Belichick's at Carolina and that loophole exists, I would firmly expect him to have his hand raised up, not left hand, of course, for the Commanders. But I firmly expect him to have his hand raised up that North Carolina will be a week 0 candidate as long as Bill Belichick and Michael Lombardi are at North Carolina, because if they get the advantage of starting practice earlier and an extra bye week in the season, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Speaking of transfers or advantages in sports, it's officially now a fully retooled offensive line for the Virginia Tech Hokies because Bob Schick, the last offensive lineman from last year's season, made 23 starts the last 2 seasons. He has entered the transfer portal from Virginia Tech. To me, this is classic supply and demand in college athletics. I wouldn't at all be shocked if he's got a bigger NIL deal coming somewhere else. And it's one of those, how much are you really wanting to overpay for mediocrity? Because a lot of programs are so desperate that they will pay a lot of money for mediocre players in college athletics. But with all due respect to Bob Schick, who made 23 starts the last 2 seasons on the offensive line for Virginia Tech, I don't put him in the Xavier Chaplin deserving of a 7-figure payday from the SEC like he probably got from Auburn, or Braylon Moore, the center, who got a great deal from LSU.
Yeah.
Bob Schick is somebody's desperate enough to pay him money, and if you're Virginia Tech, this is where if you are already going to struggle on the offensive line, and indications are they have struggled on the offensive line in the lead up to the start of this season, then find a way to develop the guys that are there internally. And you would think with Matt Moore, the new offensive line coach at Virginia Tech, you've probably done the calculations and gone, is it really worth investing this much money in a guy who maybe can get more? God bless him. Don't begrudge him for it. And again, if I'm Bob Schick, I probably am getting as much as I can now because he doesn't scream pro potential.
No.
So if I'm Bob Schick and somebody's going to overpay for your services for 1 year and you've already graduated and you've done everything else academically and this guy's taking a 2-year mission as well, so he's in his mid-20s, God bless him for getting that much money. But if I'm Virginia Tech, this is classic economics, Moneyball 101. Meanwhile, the other side of transfers, we have not touched on this, but it's overdue.
Number 2.
Liberty. Transfer defensive lineman Jay Hardy recommitting to Auburn. Is that what we would call it? And then TJ Bush to Cal. About TJ Bush to Cal first. I know our Philip Doss has floated the idea of $500,000 a year. When you're talking about a lot of these schools having like $6 million total in NIL, if you do a quick little math on that, $500,000 per month versus $500,000 per year is a drastic difference.
Yeah.
$500K a year for TJ Bush to Cal, based on what I've seen before out of guys, last couple of years on the defensive line making when you're a rotational piece and maybe a good starter at a mid-level program. And that's kind of what Cal is. They're a middling ACC program. That sounds about right. $500,000 a year for TJ Bush.
But he's not getting $500K. He'd be getting $200, $250 because of taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great point about, the good old People's Republic of California where they're going to take like 40% of that out. So he'll get like $275,000.
Because Nico's getting $2 million and he's only going to make $900,000 out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of tax money he's got to give out. Now, granted, Nico doesn't have to pay an agent a couple $100,000 because his dad is his agent. But the point being, I don't begrudge TJ Bush, but the number you're seeing on the surface may sound great. Even $275,000 is probably more than he would have gotten just sticking at Liberty.
Oh, absolutely.
But no, and then the chance to go up against ACC competition, it does look better if you're TJ Bush. So I understand it from that perspective. And maybe isn't another transfer up to an SEC or a Big Ten
Yeah.
program is in order, or a bigger program, even if he has a good year at Cal, because he'd have that ability to make that transfer. But I get it from that standpoint. Jay Hardy to Auburn is the classic example of the 2 to 3 deep players at an SEC program are going to make more than the key starters at a group of 5 program. Because Jay Hardy was a rotational defensive lineman at Liberty. God bless him if he can go to Auburn and be a rotational defensive lineman and literally like quadruple his pay. I mean, Jamie Chadwell was once reportedly making $800,000 a year at Coastal and now reportedly gets $4 million a year. So he 5 times his pay, leaving Coastal to go to Liberty University. And I don't begrudge him for it. But when you're talking about players doing the same thing, I don't begrudge a Jay Hardy for it because, similar to Bob Schick, Jay Hardy to me screams as the type of guy that he might be a good rotational piece in college, but I don't think he's likely to hear his name called when the NFL draft comes, despite the fact that his relatives and supporters may think that's going to happen next year. I don't think it is. So if he has a chance to substantially boost his earnings for a 1-year period at Auburn and he's comfortable with the coaches, God bless him. Go get the bag while you can. Meanwhile, totally shifting away, but
Number 1.
Look, I'm not necessarily all for like the political undertones of Earth Day, pro this candidate, anti that candidate, but I am pro good quality environmental responsibility whenever you can reasonably exercise it. Yes, I get the irony spoken from someone who drives a Chevy Tahoe. Laugh all you want about that. But the Atlanta Hawks and their arena down in Atlanta, whose name I won't mention because they're not a partner of ours, have diverted more than 10 million pounds of waste from landfills since the beginning of May 2021 with their zero waste efforts. This according to SBJ's Brett McCormick. I love it. Look, anything you can do to raise the awareness about environmental responsibility is a fantastic initiative. Love it. Think it's an awesome idea. I wish more teams would do this. And again, we can laugh about the political leanings of Lynchburg versus Charlottesville and how one is extremely one way and the other is extreme to the opposite side. But I will say this, when I go cover a UVA game, I do think it's awesome that instead of getting bottled water, they have those aluminum bottles, which are much more environmentally friendly. I'd love to see Virginia Tech, Liberty, and other schools adopt that same philosophy. I don't know the cash cost to it, but if you're asking me as someone who does have an environmentally conscious bone or 5 in my body, I would say, yeah, it'd be a really cool thing. And when people are environmentally responsible, I'll bring it up with the understanding that I don't come close to siding on the political leanings of a lot of people in that particular category. Meanwhile, since we've towed the line and maybe stepped a smidge over it, we'll get back on side with somebody who knows what offsides can do to your offensive chances in the NHL's Stanley Cup playoffs. Vic Morton of the NHL Wraparound Podcast, slated to join us next here in the Fast Lane.
Exceptional service. Why start anywhere else? It's all in one location at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. And with straightforward pricing and inventory arriving daily, there's no reason to start anywhere else than the Motor Mile. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for most makes and models. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs, many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Shop over 900 used vehicles in stock now, more than any other dealer in the area. Sheeler owns the finance company, so getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile. With financing options for every budget, you're a valued customer and not just a number on the Motor Mile. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier family-owned car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com. And we're excited to welcome Honda and Hyundai to the Motor Mile family. Why start anywhere else?
Hi, Gary the Third here, and I'm excited to say spring has arrived at Gary's Garden Center with great plants and a great selection. Gary's has seasonal color flowers along with vegetables, 60-plus varieties of herbs, perennial flowers, and much more. With friendly service and great advice, we are always happy to answer your questions. Visit Gary's Garden Center at 794 Leesville Road for all your lawn and garden needs. Stop by, say hi, and take a look around.
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
Are you ready to move to the next chapter of your life? That means you're ready for us. Hi, I'm Moyanne Harding, the region's only total turnkey realtor and interior designer. We'll come to you and help you decide what you're ready to let go of and bring you top dollar for those unwanted items. Most importantly, we'll sell your most valuable investment, your home. With decades of experience, just hand your keys to us and let the stress melt away. Call me today and book your consultation, www.moyanne.com.
Moyanne Harding, brokered by Keller Williams.
Experience, reputation, growth. These are what make Brownstone Properties the area's most trusted property management company. With the recent addition of 15 new communities at Smith Mountain Lake, we have expanded our HOA portfolio to over 80 communities across the region. Combine these with over 2,500 residential units, and it's easy to see why our reputation and business continue to grow. Let our experience work for you. Visit us today at brownstoneproperties.com or 3720 Old Forest Road in Lynchburg.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook. And our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Head to lynchburg-hillcats.com to lock in your tickets for the Lynchburg Hillcats this season. Now here's VTR in Sport.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
About to talk some NHL Stanley Cup playoff opening round action with Vic Morin of the NHL, a wrap around podcast. And his co-host is Neil Smith, who said he would be shocked if the Florida Panthers end up winning against Tampa Bay tomorrow night. Now, we will look at that a little bit later, but the concerns could be very reasonable for the Washington Capitals. They won, but it was in overtime. It didn't look all that crisp in game one and kind of continues a trend that Washington fans would call disturbing to end the regular season around the chase for the Alex Ovechkin record-breaking goal, which he got. But now the focus is on the Stanley Cup playoff. And joining us now to discuss that is Vic Morin of the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Vic, we're a game into this. It's not panic time, especially when you have a 1-0 series lead. But is it concern time for Washington that they've won, but maybe have not looked as impressive as you would expect a team that's had, by and large, one of the best regular seasons in the NHL?
Mild concern right now. I was not wowed by the way they forced themselves to defend the better part of the last 10 minutes of that game once Montreal broke the shutout on Cole Caulfield's goal, and it was almost a complete reversal of the first 50 minutes where the Capitals appeared to have their way. And after Caulfield scored, the entire game was in in the Capitals' end, right up until the tying goal by Nick Suzuki. So I think that that's an area of concern, and it is something that can certainly be remedied. I believe Spencer Carberry would be reminding his club that late in third periods, safe breakouts up along the boards, nothing in the middle of the ice, get pucks in deep, have your third man high, don't get caught on odd man rushes the other way. I think they're going to be fine. This was a good scare for them, and perhaps even more now than ever, a wake-up call that the Ovi chase is over. We've got a new task at hand. Let's get to it. Let's be the team that was the best team in the Eastern Conference during the course of the regular season.
What do you take away, Vic, from the fact that Washington's Game 1 victory against Montreal in the opening round of the Stanley Cup playoffs featured a lot of Alex Ovechkin, not necessarily just having to deliver verbal pep talks, but backing it up with the first goal, his 73rd career goal, and then his 74th, which was the game winner in overtime.
That's a leader, and that's something that he has evolved into over the course of his career. You have to remember that when Ovi came into the league back in 05-06, most of your captains were simply your best players, and he became that relatively quickly, probably before he should have been. But over time, you learn what it is to be a leader, to take care of the rest of your team, to send a message when a message needs to be sent, and most of all, lead by example. And who better than him?
Vic Morin of the NHL Wraparound Podcast. He and former New York Rangers president and general manager Neil Smith take you through what's going on in the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Their latest update dropped earlier today and looks at the action that wrapped up Tuesday and will take place Wednesday and Thursday. Part of that action that wrapped up the other day were the Carolina Hurricanes, who did not look as convincing as their Game 1 victory, but still have a 2-0 lead over the New Jersey Devils. Is there concern from the letdown standpoint, or was it going to be really difficult for Carolina to be that crisp and that dominant, knowing that New Jersey's a bit injured and shorthanded right now, but they're well coached and disciplined enough to make adjustments?
And the Devils made adjustments, and they played extremely well in the first period of the second game last night, but the Hurricanes managed to stem that tide, and they pull even on the goal by Shane Gostisbehere. And then Jordan Martinook, I got to tell you something, and I've said this very often on different podcasts over the course of time with Neil, that a player like Jordan Martinook doesn't win you the Stanley Cup, but he is the type of player that you have to have in order to win one. And his shorthanded goal, fabulous shot, and then he sets up Seth Jarvis for the empty netter. So, look, the Hurricanes are going to get the Devils' best in Game 3. That always happens when you change venues. There's going to be a lot of energy at the Prudential Center. The Devils are going to come out hyped, and as often is the case for the visiting team, when the venue switches, get through those first 10 minutes. Be no worse off than a goal down, let the crowd settle in, and then you settle into your game.
When you look at the return to New Jersey for Carolina and the Devils, as that series will go north well, they probably are already physically north, but the games will begin in the northern part of that region, later this week. Are you anticipating a trip back to Raleigh because it's either evened up or at least the Devils have stolen one of those two?
I think the Devils get a game there, but I do think it comes back 3-1. The Hurricanes are good enough. They're the better team in this, and they're probably the better team even if Jack Hughes is in the lineup, and then you factor in Luke Hughes' injury, Brendan Dillon's injury. The Hurricanes are the better team. They're the more healthy team. Like I said, I think the Devils get one because they are still a quality hockey club, but Hurricanes are just going to have too much for them in the end, I believe.
Vic Morin from the NHL Wraparound Podcast hanging out with us today in the Fast Lane. When you guys did your Stanley Cup final or Stanley Cup playoff series breakdowns for the opening round, you had Carolina in 5 over the Devils. You had Washington in 5 over the Canadiens. Kind of the consensus opinion. There may have been a dissenter amongst the three of you with one of those picks. There are 6 different versions of picks in that. So if I'm messing it up, we ask for you to give us forgiveness. We will ask, though, are you still on board with that idea that ultimately we're looking at shorter series, 4 to 5 games, as opposed to longer series where you might trend to 6-7 with both the Capitals and the Canadiens?
I think they are simply the better teams. And there are a lot of good clubs in the NHL. Everybody that makes it to the playoffs is good. And as Neil had said yesterday on our show, well, I don't know how good that the Montreal Canadiens really are. And the truth is they emerged as the best of a mediocre bunch that was fighting for that last spot. But again, same case as the Hurricanes and the Devils. The Capitals are simply the better team. Do I think that Montreal is going to get a bit of a boost when they go home for the third game? Yeah, I do. But I expect the Capitals to win in game number 2, And then I think Montreal will get a game up there, and the Capitals will wrap this one up in 5 also. They simply have too much. It's a feel-good story for Montreal. They have done a great job. Quite frankly, they had no business hanging around game 1 as long as they did. And as I said earlier, I believe that Spencer Carberry will have the remedy for that, and the Caps will be more on their toes tonight than they were in game number 1.
Vic, you and Neil always touch on big picture storylines outside of the games themselves. One of which, and we'll bring this up, regular season viewership for the NHL was down 12% across its TV partners. Those numbers are in. It's expected the playoffs would be down just because a lot of the original 6 franchises in those big markets in Philly, Boston, Chicago, New York are largely unrepresented outside of the New Jersey Devils. Is that a long-term concern, or is this just the reality that sometimes you're going to have years like this, but the excitement will still be there and people will still be drawn to this?
That's exactly the point. The big market teams are going to draw. However, if you look at the quality of the product, the NHL has never been in a better space. And when I mentioned this on one of our wraparound shows, the truth is when the NHL came out of the lockout and OLN versus and the NBC group, the first 2 years, in 2006, they got the Hurricanes and Oilers, 2 small market clubs. The second year, they got Anaheim and Ottawa. Anaheim is not Los Angeles any more than New Jersey is New York. So when you sign up and you sign into a rights deal, you get what you get. It is what it is. However, in the years after that, they got back-to-back Pittsburgh, Detroit. And in 2010, 2011, they got the Bruins and the Blackhawks, and they got the Kings and Rangers. So over the course of time, all of this manages to really even itself out. And I would just say to anybody that is borderline, whether do I watch the NBA or do I watch the NHL? There is no better spectacle than the Stanley Cup playoffs. And anybody that watched on Monday night, take the sweaters off the team and just judge it by product. That was absolutely some phenomenal theater.
Hey, we're not complaining in our backyard. The Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes both look strong this postseason and in future years, and there's a good chance one of them will be in the semifinals of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs and the conference finals as long as they take care of business in round 1. They'd play in round 2. Somebody who's always taking care of business with the NHL Wraparound podcast is Vic Morin. He and his colleague Neil Smith joining us throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs right here on the Fast Lane. Vic, good to chat with you. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to another one of these with you or Neil, whoever joins us next week and every week going forward.
Always our pleasure, Ed.
Vic Morin with us here in the Fast Lane. And to back up his point, you'll back me up on this, as they would say in my kid's favorite movie, Good Burger. If you watch game 1 of Memphis, Oklahoma City, you're not getting that type of blowout in the Stanley Cup playoffs. When we return, Draft Talk, Tony Pauline, next.
Secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
Hi, Gary III here, and I'm excited to say spring has arrived at Gary's Garden Center with great plants and a great selection. Gary's has seasonal color flowers along with vegetables, 60-plus varieties of herbs, perennial flowers, and much more. With friendly service and great advice, we are always happy to answer your questions. Visit Gary's Garden Center at 794 Leesville Road for all your lawn and garden needs. Stop by, say hi, and take a look around.
Are you ready to move to the next chapter of your life? That means you're ready for us. Hi, I'm Moyanne Harding, the region's only total turnkey realtor and interior designer. We'll come to you and help you decide what you're ready to let go of and bring you top dollar for those unwanted items. Most importantly, we'll sell your most valuable investment, your home. With decades of experience, just hand your keys to us and let the stress melt away. Call me today and book your consultation, www.moyanne.com.
Moyanne Harding, brokered by Keller Williams.
Allstate agent Donovan Howell is now serving Lynchburg. He lives and works here just like you. And with all kinds of local insurance advice, Donovan is someone you can count on to help you protect all that's good in your life. Donovan makes it easy to save on the quality protection you need, and I'll even help you do the switching and the paperwork for you.
Call or come by the Donovan Howell Allstate office in Windhurst today.
Join us on May 2nd and 3rd for Freedom 424's annual 5K event, Run for Their Lives, brought to you by Thrive Lynchburg Health and Wellness Expo. This combination of events seeks to bring Lynchburg all of the health and wellness resources that it so deserves. Come experience our 5K, our kids' 1 mile race, and an expo with over 50 vendors to give you the tips and tricks you need to stay healthy. We hope to see you out at the LU Indoor Track Complex Friday night or Saturday morning, May 2nd and 3rd.
When shopping for auto insurance, it's worth paying a little bit more for strong coverage against uninsured drivers. That way, if you're on the wrong end of an accident, you and your family are protected from drivers with little to no insurance. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. Just a friendly reminder that saying yes to a strong policy with higher uninsured motorist coverage limits is a small investment that you can make to protect you and your family against a big headache. If you've been injured in a motor vehicle accident, call us at 777-HURT or visit trostlaw.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
So our next guest might appreciate the fact that, again, next Saturday, May the 3rd, it is the Thrive Wellness Expo. Starts with the 5K that I'll be running for Freedom 424 over at the Liberty University Indoor Track Facility. And yesterday, I was at what I like to call the Oval Office. It's the track. You just kind of go in an oval, hence the term Oval Office. And it's the second time leading up to an NFL draft that I've been at the Oval Office. The other was the Kyler Murray year where he went number 1. And immediately during the workout, I heard, listening at double the speed, a Tony Pauline podcast. And he was talking about Kyler Murray. He had passed the bars of height requirement and concerns for the Arizona Cardinals. So he is projected to go number 1, which he eventually did a few years ago. This past one, and we're a VSiN affiliate, so I feel comfortable saying this, but Tony was on, I guess, Monday night, but I heard it Tuesday morning on VSiN, and he was talking about where the real intrigue at the NFL draft looks like it may start at the 4th pick, which for a while people would presume was going to be Will Campbell, the offensive lineman of LSU. But in the spirit of soon-to-be outgoing College Game Day host Lee Corso, not so fast, my friends, because maybe it's Will Campbell, but the Patriots might have other ideas. So who better to shed light on that than the person who has been mentioning this for a week or so, if you followed him at Tony Pauline on Twitter and sportskita.com, the aforementioned Tony Pauline, generous enough to give us some time here in the Fast Lane. Tony, a pleasure to decathlete with you. As a former decathlete yourself, hopefully you appreciate the fact that my biggest revelations come when I'm at the Oval Office practicing track. And yes, it appears that maybe the draft, according to your reporting, really gets interesting starting with the 4th pick.
Yes. I mean, I can tell you that myself, when I'm out on a run, which is every day, I basically solve all the world's problems. But getting back to the topic at hand, yeah, I mean, everyone thinks it's going to be Will Campbell, and it's still likely to be Will Campbell. But Armand Membo, the tackle from Missouri, and Jalen Walker, the pass rusher, linebacker from Georgia, is getting a lot of conversation, a lot of consideration with that 4th pick to the Patriots. I mean, they want a pass rusher. You got Mike Vrabel there, who's a defensive-minded coach. People think that Armand Membo is going to be a better tackle than Will Campbell. So although mock drafts and even my final mock draft is likely to have Will Campbell with the 4th pick going to the Patriots at the 4th pick, it wouldn't be a surprise if it's either of the 2 players I mentioned, Armand Membo or Jalen Walker.
At what point do you anticipate that decision coming, or is this the type of thing where we may be holding our breaths after Cam Ward presumably goes number 1, Travis Hunter to Cleveland at 2, and Abdul Carter from Penn State to the Giants at 3?
Well, I'm sure, they'll be arguing about it, or at least discussing it all the way through. They'll probably have a decision made. They'll go through the checks and balances, and then they'll call it in. I think, they'll have a very good idea as to what they're going to do well before the draft even begins tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. And, it'll just be some finishing touches on it to make sure that they are secure with their decision.
Tony Pauline, that's his Twitter account, and sportskeeda.com is where you can keep up with his work. Loaded up over the next 3 to 4 days, the next week really, with NFL draft coverage before, during, and after the event. And Tony's generous enough to chat with us in the fast lane. 4 you mentioned could be a surprise point. 5, 6, 7, is this where it starts to get really dicey in your eyes, that for a while people had thought it was just going to be Will Campbell to the Patriots at 4, and number 5 it was going to be Mason Graham and Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders at 6, that as your reporting has mentioned the last couple of weeks, maybe that might change too?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it looks like the Jaguars are going to go with Ashton Jeanty with the 5th pick out of draft. Ashton Jeanty, the record-breaking running back from Boise State. On my board, he is the 3rd best prospect. So when you consider Jacksonville taking him at 5, that would be good value. They want to put pieces around Trevor Lawrence to make him a better quarterback. They would have liked to have a receiver at the spot. They would have liked the tight end. Yet no skill position player ranks as highly as Ashton Jeanty in this draft, or Ashton Jeanty when the Jaguars are called to the clock with the 5th pick.
Wow, this could get real crazy really early in the NFL draft. And it's funny because I don't know, and please refresh me if you do a lot of trade projections with your sportskeeda.com mock drafts, but we haven't seen a lot of talk of that. Do you anticipate that this might get real trade heavy, or do you anticipate that it may be more organic chaos, that teams stick and pick, but the board doesn't look anything like people anticipated it would a couple weeks ago?
I think what's going to happen is when you get down around the 9th pick, maybe earlier, you're going to have a lot of teams, New Orleans, potentially Chicago. Later on down the line, you look in the middle of the first round, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Minnesota, Washington, even Seattle, a few spots at 18 that want to trade down. But you have to remember, just because a team wants to trade down, they got to find a partner that wants to trade up. And when you look at this draft overall, it's not a very deep first round. I mean, you talk to some teams, as I reported yesterday, the Buffalo Bills have 12 players with first-round grades, which means, according to their board, once you get into the middle of the first round, you're selecting second-round players. So while all these teams want to trade down, you're going to have to find a team that wants to trade up to get a player. I would say 3, maybe 4 trades in the first round. Obviously, you get into the late part of round 2, you get a situation where those teams at the top of the draft, whether it be the Browns, whether it be the Giants, maybe the Saints, maybe the Jets, even the Raiders that need a quarterback or a quarterback for the future, they may get a little antsy and they trade up. If Shedeur Sanders is still on the board, if Jackson Dart is still on the board, Jalen Milroe, they trade back into the bottom part of round 1 to get the quarterback. We've seen that time and time again, probably the past 15 years.
Tony Pauline with us here in the Fast Lane. You mentioned the idea of everybody wanting to trade down. The Washington Commanders, there's the theory that they want to trade down and they would need to trade down. Is that one of those where by the end of this draft, Commanders fans and those within the organization may need to think of the fact that the draft more was kind of a 2-part? The first part was trading those picks for Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel. And the second part is whatever, again, organically transpires because they want to trade down, but there's not the market for it.
It could be. I mean, as a matter of fact, in my mock draft, I mentioned that they would really like to trade down. Now, if a top pass rusher that they really like, a Michael Green or somebody like that happens to fall in their laps, I'm sure that they would, it would give them pause and they would consider it because they want to come out of this draft with a pass rusher. Shamar Stewart is there. I'm sure that's another conversation that takes place about Shamar Stewart, the outstanding athlete from Texas A&M, who really doesn't have a lot of production, but he's got great upside. So even a cornerback, if a guy like Jahdae Barron is there, do they take him? He's a really good player, but does he fit the persona that Washington wants in their locker room? I mean, the Commanders have a good problem. They're selecting at the end of each round. They've brought in some talented players. They are a franchise on the rise, no doubt about it. But when you are when you're that type of team, you basically have to wait for the draft to come to you and make your decisions. There's no doubt about it. I wrote it up in my first round mock draft that the Commanders will look to trade down, one, hopefully come away with another day 2 pick, and then take a receiver somewhere in the 3rd round.
So you referenced the idea of the Commanders trading down. If they are unable to find the right partner, and we're chatting about the NFL draft with Tony Pauline of sportskeeda.com and at Tony Pauline on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it to keep up with his real-time insight as the draft progresses. The Washington Commanders, you mentioned defensive end. You gave a list of a couple cornerbacks. Is that the direction you see them going, or is this one of those where the board may break and the ideal wide receiver or skill position target is there, and maybe they double dip it trying to strengthen where they've already invested resources this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned defensive players, but if somehow Omarion Hampton, say the running back from North Carolina, gets past the Denver Broncos and makes it to 29, could absolutely see the Commanders jumping all over him. You know, you mentioned receiver. The only receiver, first round worthy receiver would be Emeka Egbuka. Would they consider taking Luther Burden in the first round? He needs a lot of work on his game. He seems to be a player that's sliding. I don't know that they would do that. But I'm sure they have their board, and it's just a matter of, when they're called to the clock at 29, does the top players on their board, are they worth the 29th selection? Do they have value there, or is the better value for them to trade down?
Speaking of trading down, you've been all over the story at sportskeeda.com and at Tony Pauline on Twitter about the concept of Shedeur Sanders. And, everyone expects him to fall outside the top 10, maybe the top 20, maybe beyond. And you've referenced repeatedly the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin being a potential destination. Does Pittsburgh try to get cute with something like that and trade down, or maybe trade back into the first round after using that 21st pick on something else? Or is it the type of situation where, as important as quarterbacks are, even if it's just a flat stick and pick flyer, you don't get cute with it?
Well, I mean, it cost them a lot to trade back up, because if they use the first round pick and then try to trade back up, remember, their pick in round 2 is now owned by the Seattle Seahawks with the DK Metcalf trade. So, they really don't have a lot of draft ammunition to make that sort of move. Listen, the situation is this. If they value Shedeur Sanders high enough, or any player at 21, you're going to take them. You get cute. You could basically be looking over your shoulder for the next 5 or 10 years saying, why didn't we just take the player when we were called to the clock? I've mentioned that, as you pointed out, Shedeur Sanders is a favorite of Mike Tomlin. He'd like to select him. We'll have to see what the rest of the organization thinks of Shedeur Sanders, because a lot of times when you draft Shedeur Sanders, you may be drafting his father as well. And that is a concern to some teams. But I don't think they get cute and move around. I think they'll sit there. And if he's there and that's their top guy, that's the direction they go.
Is this off base to say that part of the reason why Mike Tomlin may be more comfortable with it than a lot of coaches is he survived Ben Roethlisberger and particularly Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a survivor. The guy is basically a lifer there at Pittsburgh. He's got a lot of power, and understandably so. He's done a lot of winning there. So he deserves the benefit of the doubt. And he's had opportunities, or he could have opportunities to go elsewhere. He says, no, I'm staying in Pittsburgh. So I think it's a variety of things. I think people like, you look at coaches like Tomlin with longevity. You mentioned survivors, people who have been through the battles and basically find ways to get the job done. Pittsburgh didn't win a lot last year. I mean, they struggled down the stretch of the season, but I do believe they did better than most people thought they would.
Tony Pauline with us here. Just a couple more minutes, as he's been very generous with his time leading up to the NFL draft. A lot of coverage at sportskeeda.com and at Tony Pauline on Twitter, among the other appearances he'll be doing throughout the next week or so. And then at some point, he'll hopefully breathe and relax and recharge from the NFL draft. Tony, we've touched on the trade down and the desire of teams there. What's the likelihood that you mentioned 4-ish trades might happen on draft night for the first round? what's the likelihood that maybe we see teams, Philadelphia is most noted for looking for market inefficiencies, but Kansas City could be in this camp, Buffalo, Baltimore, among others, where they've got good stability in the organization. And if everybody's looking to trade down, those type of teams may trade up if they identify a prospect, knowing that it's not going to be the normal full freight.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kansas City and Philadelphia. I mean, we've seen Philadelphia move up a couple times, haven't we, to get the player that they covet. And I think it's a possibility because, you know, when you're looking at teams in the late part of round one, teams that have, you know, 5, 6, 7 draft picks, all those players are not going to make the roster because, they're only maybe 2 or 3 players away, and you're looking to get those 2 or 3 players. So it makes sense if the opportunity arises, package some of those picks and move up to fill the hole, because if you draft 7 or 8 players, you don't have room on your roster for 7 or 8 players.
Tony, we appreciate all your time and insight. Great perspective leading up to the NFL draft. We know we can keep up with your work at sportskeeda.com and at Tony Pauline on Twitter. Of course, Wednesday night, 7 to 9 p.m. We mentioned that because some may listen at Fastlane, Edlane on the podcast, so they may want to go back and listen. But 7 to 9 p.m. Wednesday night, you got the draft special show with WFAN in New York. What else do you have going on in the next week or so leading up to the draft?
Well, leading up to the draft, it's just 36 hours away, or not even 36 hours, 32 hours away. I mean, we'll have all the breaking news. I'll have a 3-round mock draft up. Sportskeeda.com. I have the prospect rankings. There's the mock draft simulator. We'll get through the next couple of days. I'll have some post-draft articles. And then finally, I'll be able to get my rear end up out of this office and go outside for a little while for more than a 4-mile run.
Well, the weather is pretty good in most parts of the country. We hope and pray that it is in about a week when you get a chance to actually enjoy the great outdoors. Tony, we enjoy your insight and analysis. We'll keep it locked to sportskeeda.com and Tony Pauline on Twitter throughout the NFL draft process.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back with you.
Indeed. Always a pleasure. Tony Pauline with us to wrap up the Fast Lane today. A wealth of knowledge with his NFL draft insight. He's been doing it for decades, and not to date him in a bad way, but really skilled at the NFL draft knowledge. And he's the type of person you want to really follow over the remaining coverage leading up to the NFL draft. And, I'm fascinated. Again, draft nerd here, but fascinated to see what happens at 4. Mentioning that it's probably Will Campbell from LSU, but not to be surprised whether it's Armand Mimba, the offensive lineman for Missouri, or even Jalen Walker, who has picked up a lot of steam as well. And Tony's been all over that and the other reports that have come out. And now the fun is how much of it comes to fruition. Meanwhile, keep it locked. We'll have more draft coverage in the morning warm-up tomorrow with Trey Lyle and Ty Tracy. We'll have more in the Fast Lane tomorrow with TJ and me. Philip will be around these shows as well. Plus, if you've missed anything, you know where to go. Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and wherever you listen to podcasts, as we're back live at least Thursday afternoon at 5 on the VTR and Sports app, 93.3 FM, and Ask That Smart Speaker open VTR and Sports. Oh, for those that don't already have forgotten, Fastlane, Ed Lane, and VTR and Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube. Thanks for listening to the Fast Lane on VTR and Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.
This is VSiN, the sports betting network. Welcome to Make It Rain with Adam Shine on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Yes, Wednesday edition of Make It Rain with Adam Shine here on VSiN. And my goodness, we have so much to do today. There is so much going on in the world of sports. We are extra fired up to be with you. Listen, this is the kind of day you absolutely live for. We have day baseball and really great